Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the council of today's date, focusing on the deliberations of the long-term plan. I have passed the council prayer to Councillor Dalgety. Councillors, can you please stand for the microphone?
Almighty God, as members of the Rangituki District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and the advantages we enjoy. We pray that you will give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all the communities and the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions, and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councillor. I have an apology from Councillor Carter. I think everybody else is present. Would somebody please so move? Councillor Duncan moving. Councillor Lambert seconding. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We have no public forum today. The conflict of interest is a crucial one, especially with the number of submissions that we will be hearing. I'm prepared to take conflicts of interest now, and they will be reinforced. I'll go first of all to Councillor Sharland. Welcome, Councillor, as a new councillor. Councillor.
Your Worship, I've got two conflicts of interest. Before I became a councillor, I put in a submission to the long-term plan, so I realise that I've compromised myself there, and also with the Bulls and Districts Historical Society, as I'm a committee member.
Thank you very much. That please be recorded. Councillor Hira.
Morena koutou. Just recording my conflict of interest in regards to the submission that's been put in on behalf of Mungkai Party Services in the Taipi Wellness Development Project.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duncan.
Just a conflict of interest with my husband putting in a submission, number 369.
Thank you.
Just a conflict of interest with the Taipi Health submission. I am a trustee on the Taipi Health board.
So you'll be staying out of that one?
Say that way.
Thank you.
Councillor, conflict of interest on RMR submissions. I think there are about 3.
Thank you. And please, if it jogs your memory as we go through submissions, we can of course take conflicts as they arise. Any further conflicts of interest? No. In terms of confirmation of the order of business, it is as printed in the documents. I've had no change addressed to me from staff, so I'll take that as read. Moving to item number 6, the confirmation of minutes. Looking for alterations, changes, corrections, starting page 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. If there are no alterations, amendments, could somebody please move Councillor Wilson as
Happy to move true and correct.
true and correct. Councillor Hero seconding. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We move then to item 7. These are the principal reasons we're here today, the reports for decisions. Before I pass to Jana to give her view, there are a number of comments I wish to make around this process. The first is I thank submitters, and we have had a record number of submitters. The consultation process has been very sound and robust. And it's pleasing to see in excess of 450 people have entered into this process and given their view for you to consider. I thank them for that. Thank those online watching. But as governors, I also like to thank staff for the work that has been done. Jenna and Trina, I have never seen a document compiled in the thorough way that this has been prepared for us. I think it is an outstanding piece of work. And the Chief Executive and I have made comments around that, and I'll give you the opportunity to comment as well.
Oh, well, I agree. I think it's an outstanding bit of work, especially given the time frame and the numbers. So, yeah, thumbs up to you guys.
Thank you. And Arno, we have you online. Arno, we understand the pressures of compiling the information that is required to do that. And in times where we've had to deal with Three Waters and all sorts of other issues. To Carol, the principal driver of this process, thank you very much. I think that you and staff should be proud of what you've put in front of us. So thank you. Some reminders from me to councillors. The first one is the decision process is not a numerical numbers-based decision by way of submission. So for instance, if you have a 60-40 split, that gives you guidance and gives you a feel of where the community is at. But you are charged as councillors with making the decision, and this is one input mechanism into you being able to understand this. And there may well be financial base information, understanding that some of the submitters may not have had at their disposal. So that's the decision that you have been charged with. And you may consider the affordability of the long-term plan, both now and in the future. You need to consider the debt position now and in the future, and that you must act on behalf of the district as opposed to your individual ward. I know that councillors, you're well aware of these principles, but it doesn't hurt, especially for those online, to point out the responsibilities you have across the wider district. You must understand that you as a councillor have to consider by law under local government acts the four well-beings, which are the economic development, cultural, social and environmental issues. There are a number of submitters that essentially urge you to stick to your core knitting and that you should not be involved in these spaces. However, you have a responsibility under Government Act to consider them. And I thank staff, as I've done, in terms of the collation and responses. However, as councillors, once you adopt the LTP, those responses become your governor's responses back to submitters. So it is not a staff response, it is the government's response. If there is a response that you take, you have concerns with, or you would like to see it phrased in a different way, please don't get into, I want different individual words, but the intent of those submissions is important. And if, for instance, there was a submission that says we intend dealing with this sometime in the future, you may have a particular different view around that. So that's just something that I wanted to point out. Next one, staff have provided a number of recommendations as part of this report, and you can move or recommend alternatives or amendments. They are a guide as to how you may wish to proceed, and they are. Well, I must say, when I read the document, they are very sound recommendations in principle. However, any alternative that you wish to put forward today for any course of action needs to align to a submission. You can't suddenly decide that you're going to go for something completely different, that there isn't a submission or a council position already established to do it. So where possible, please, can you refer back to either a group of submissions with regard to this matter or a particular submission, and where possible, a page and reference number. Today was quite a process, and things do tend to move reasonably quickly. And please, it is your absolute right to say to the chair, I need to get guidance on something, I want further information, or could you hold for a second while I go back and check in relation to the numerous documents that are on your tablets, etc. That is absolutely your right. And you have been asked to provide questions ahead of the deliberations wherever possible. But that doesn't mean that if something arises during the meeting, that you don't have the right to question it, ask for further information. And in terms of that process, we may well be discussing something, need more information, and we put a hold on that discussion and move to something else or come back. Okay. We have spent the last little note from me, if you like. Sorry about this housekeeping, but it is, we've spent a considerable time on this process. There's been the opportunity to listen to all sorts of points of view. This principally is around the deliberations today. As such, I don't intend to set aside standing orders. So the rules will be in place with standing orders, that there are 3 speakers for and 3 speakers against, and then we'll be voting on a motion. I would ask people if there are questions, that is a separate process. So we will take questions first. We'll address that, and then I would like somebody to be able to move a motion so it is up for discussion and vote. Any clarification from staff? Anything that I've said, you have any questions around? Any questions from councillors around, what I've been saying? And I know that most of you are well aware of these principles and processes. Thank you very much. We move then to 7.1. Jana, do you wish to speak first around addressing the process? Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
So you'll be aware that council adopted the consultation document Where's It at Rangitikei on the 29th of February, which started our consultation period between 8th of March and 7th of April. During this time, you were out and about across the district at different meetings, meeting a lot of people, and we also used other methods of engagement, such as Facebook and newspapers. And this was really well received. We ended up receiving a number of submissions from a wide range of people from different ages, locations across the district. And we received 454 submissions, which is the most this council has ever received. Of these submitters, 5 spoke at the hearing in Taihape, and a further 18 spoke at the hearing here in Martin. Today you'll make the decisions on what you'd like to be included in the long-term plan, so officers can go back and update the long-term plan and get it audited prior to you adopting it next month. The officer analysis of submissions is in a separate document, so you'll have to find your way there, and you'll see that they're analysed by key choice, and then the additional comments from submitters are organised by groups of activities. I'll just hand over to Dave briefly before we get into the first key choice.
Thank you. I'd just like to talk about an email that was sent out earlier this week. As the Mayor said earlier, we are working in a world of lots of moving parts, and part of the financial year end has identified, further to an audit recommendation, that we wrote off $5 million worth of book value of building assets, which has reduced our underlying depreciation to a larger extent than we initially thought. So the figures that are included in the draft long-term plan, the depreciation charge is actually about 540 grand more than will actually be in the long-term plan next week. So what that basically means is, from a cash perspective, there's no change because depreciation is a non-cash expense. But from a balanced budget perspective, the deficits that we showed in the long-term plan, draft long-term plan, with the long-term plan rates increases in, the deficits will be higher than as is now the case. So that gives our options of, in terms of balancing the budget, you can reduce rates and have the same impact on what we consulted with in terms of deficit and surplus. But if we do that, we'll have a worse cash position. So there's lots of moving parts to that equation, or you can do something in between. Just bear that in mind. The impact is, all other things being equal, the reduction in depreciation is equivalent to 1.7% of rates. If you choose to reduce rates by 1.7% to accommodate that 540 grand, because we're reducing cash coming in but no cash going out, we will have to increase subsequent years' rates by a similar amount, but we can stagger it over years to get the cash back, otherwise we'll exceed that. So quite complicated, lots of moving parts to that, and happy to pause and take questions.
What I think, Mr. Chairman, what I prefer we do is we run through, we bear in mind that we have that discussion to come.
Yeah.
And that we handle that discussion subsequent to making the decisions around the deliberations submissions that we've had. You're right, it is a complicated beast in itself. Any counter view from staff as to how I'm proceeding with this?
I think that's the right process. Then you've got an idea where you sit and all the decisions that have been made.
So if there's no further questions on that, we can go through the key choices.
I might just pause you there a minute with your permission. What I might do is just receive the reports, etc. first. There's a series of reports, and would somebody move that we receive the deliberations report, please? Councillor Dalgety, you're moving. Looking for a second. Councillor Duncan seconding. You wish to speak to it? I'll put it to any questions, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Recommendation 2 is that for us to deal with this, we need to receive the submissions. Would somebody like to move that we receive the submissions? No problem, we don't. Councillor Lambert moving, Councillor Wilson seconding. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. And the third recommendation, that council acknowledges all submissions made to the draft long-term plan 2024 and through to 2034. And we thank the submitters formally, even though I have done so. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Hero, seconding. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Recommendation 4, we will actually deal with subsequently once you've made your decisions, because there may be amendments as we proceed. So move you back to you. We pause a halt here and we effectively jump into recommendations 5 and etc. in terms of specific submissions and requests. Is that okay with you? Hand back to you. Thank you very much.
So the first key choice that we consulted on was the Martin Pool. We consulted on 2 options. Option 1 was your preferred option, that the Martin Pool would remain open on a seasonal basis. For this one, the impact on rates is nothing. The impact on debt will be nothing, and there'll be no change from the current level of service. Option 2, was that from 2024-25 financial year, the Martin Pool would be open all year round. And this would have an impact on rates at 1.2%. Impact on debt would be nil, and there will be an increase in level of service from the current level. We had 423 submitters who submitted on this key choice. 33% of submitters chose option 1, while 62% of submitters chose option 2, and a further 5% chose something else. We've actually also broken it down by the submitters who identified that they were from Martin, in which 22% preferred option 1, 73% option 2, and 5% something else. There were a number of key themes for each of these options. Some of the key themes that came through for option 1 was concerns about the cost, about the use of the pool, that the facility isn't suitable to be open year round, and that there are other pools outside of this district that remain open throughout the year. Key themes for option 2 included support for children to have access to swimming lessons all year, ability to learn about water safety, support to enable training for sports, to promote exercise and physical and mental health, and that travelling to pools out of the district can be costly and time consuming. There were a few submitters that had other suggestions. They include trialling year round, other ways to find funding to open the pool year round, and concerns about the level of use.
Happy to take questions. I have a question. In terms of the costs of operating the pool, page 8, it refers to data collected 2020, which indicates that there'd be an additional 10,000 people in 2020, which would equate to effectively 2,000 people per month. Has there been a review of that figure in terms of the attendance figures that we've been given lately?
No, there hasn't been a review of that, but just with the figures that are in here, there is a drop for this current swim season. Part of that, they lost their aqua coach who went to a full-time job down the South Island, and their swimming coach who went to a full-time job in the Hawke's Bay. I've only just got the breakdown of the individual groupings this morning. Interestingly, there was an increase in the number of seniors that were using it for casual swimming, etc., but a drop definitely in the aerobic side and swim lessons.
So the figures indicated April of 900,
Yes.
which would indicate instead of 2,000 people a month, it's likely to be well under 1,000.
And typically in the past, in April, the numbers have dropped.
Thank you. Further questions?
Yeah, was going to be a question on that table we received in the report. That's 10,000 people less this year than last year.
Further questions, Councillor Dunphy?
Has there been any approach to other interested stakeholders like the local schools to see if they would take up the winter option?
Yes, we have phoned around maybe half a dozen schools and they have indicated that they would.
Thank you.
So just a clarification that they would continue to use the pool, or that they would use the off-season months for active swim sessions?
They would use the off-season months.
Oh. Any further questions? Councillor Duncan, Councillor Rakawa, Councillor Duncan.
I have two separate questions. One of them on that note, a number of submitters suggested that if the pool was open year round, that would encourage full-time staff. Would that be something that you would think we obviously lost 2 staff members because they couldn't work full-time, perhaps?
Yes, I think that is correct, and I've seen that it's not just been an issue with our district swim centres, but others around the country that are seasonal.
Can I have a separate question? Or?
Yeah, I'll take a
Sorry, and I note a number of submitters, including 173, said that we needed to fix the roof, and another one said we needed to insulate the ceiling because so to keep it open, that needed to be something that happened at the same time. Can you tell me what condition the pool is in?
I think Arno looks after the assets, so perhaps he can speak to this one.
Sorry, Arno, did you hear that question?
Yes, I did. It's for you, the chair. Yes, at the end of this swim season, we did a full walkabout of the whole site to see, first of all, is there things we can do to improve performance and efficiencies? And secondly, are there some big structural things that we need to have a look at from an asset management perspective? So we did identify a couple of things that's a bit concerning in the structural setup of the pool. So we've had engineers in to have a look, and we expect to report back on that shortly. We also identified that a lot of the equipment's very old. So for instance, the heating equipment's very old. And with the new partnership that we have with the pool operators, we can now try and move to industry best practice to find stuff that is more up to date and more efficient and works better. So there'll definitely be a couple of things that we have to fix on the asset. And then there's a couple of things that we can do to make it more efficient.
Thank you. Councillor Rokawa.
Mine was in relation to 173 as well, in terms of the heating for the roof. I think Arno's answered that.
Thank you. Councillor Louder.
One submitter made suggestions that council take over the running of the pool. Has that been entertained at all?
Back in 2013, council did run it in-house. They found that they didn't have the staff to do it. We didn't have the skills in-house, and that hasn't changed. Wasn't felt it was successful.
Councillor Hero.
Just as an add-on to Councillor Duncan's question, in regard to the staffing, we have the running of that pool is done by a contractor. Correct? Is it? That's correct. Yes. So we have in the contract itself, which I don't know if I've seen it, but I can't remember. That type of issue when it arises, when does it come back into? I'm just wondering what effect do we have as the council to ensure that full, that contractor ensures that they have a full raft of staff.
So the contractor presents to council annually, and it's usually the Assets Infrastructure Committee, and usually around the August meeting, they'll come and speak to an annual report. That's the opportunity.
A question from me and a clarification, and I'm aware of the answer, but people need to be aware. So if we did extend the season, there are more admission fees charges. Who receives that money?
The contractor.
So effectively, we would wear the costs and the contractor takes.
The contract, excuse me, under the current contract, the contractor pays for the electricity, water, gas, minor maintenance, and all that type of thing. So it's, yeah.
So there's a trade-off here.
Yes.
Any further, Councillor Louder?
Well, there's two questions, but they're sort of linked. How much money does council spend on maintenance on the pool on an annual basis? And is there any understanding of what investment in the pool is needed to bring it to a winter level swimming comfort?
I'm just aware that staff may not have that figure. You're welcome to answer, of course.
No, I don't, and I'm not sure if Arno does for the asset side of things.
No, His Worship's correct. We do not have confirmed numbers around that. The moment I have those, I'll be bringing them to council. I'm not sure about the annual operating costs or maintenance costs from council. I'm not sure what that number is.
Perhaps I could refine the question a little bit for you, Arno. Is there anything in our asset management plan as existing now around an upgrade position that you're aware of?
Not at the moment, no. Mm.
I can comment on that from the report that was done in 2020. I think that must have been potentially year 6 this year, though we've talked about the internal heating of the airspace, and there was a sum put in of approximately 500,000, but that was the only major one at that time.
Thank you. I'm starting to the stage where I really want a motion put on the table. Is that what you're wanting to do?
Looking to move back to the agenda with regards to recommendation 5, your wish.
And is this a question or a question I'll take? And then I'll come back to you for a motion.
All right.
Maybe subsequent questions.
I'm interested with regards to the thought of a trial period. Does staff have any recommendations around that?
From my perspective, I'm not sure that I would have concerns, and I might be able to answer this better, but it's a huge, 50-metre pool heating that water, and we don't have an insulated building. My concern would be being able to maintain that water at a sufficient temperature. But as I said, Arno might be in a better position to answer that.
Just clarification around this. Are you saying that you have a concern that the ability to heat the water in the off season is an issue?
As the building is now, but as I said, Arno from an asset perspective might be able to answer that better. That would be, I just don't know if the current heating.
Arno.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I completely agree. I think, and this is just my professional opinion at the moment, but I think what this really requires is a bit of a mixture of things. I think we need to look at the asset in a lot more detail to figure out how do we get it to 2024, how do we get it to become more efficient, and especially because it's dependent on heat transfer so much. So we've just started that work now, and I think a trial period or maybe a 3-year staggered process is a better option than just going, let's try it this winter. I think we could potentially spend capital on the facility that will improve a lot of things that potentially could bring the operating cost down. It'll also give us some time to generate more business over the winter period. So there's a whole lot of benefits if we rather stagger the switch over to a full year rather than go from 8 or 9 months a year to a full year right now. But yeah, ultimately that's a council decision. What we have found there is a lot of very old equipment. There would have to be some capital investment to bring things up to speed, and I think that'll make a big difference.
Look, I said I'll come back to you, Councillor Wilson, and put a motion on the table. That won't preclude questions in the future, but hang on, just wait a second. Councillor Moore, have you got a question?
It's about the 1.2% rate increase. That does not include any capital expenditure on getting the pool up to standard. It's purely operating costs. Is that right?
That's correct.
That's correct, yes.
Look, I'll go Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Worship. Good range of questions there. I would like to move a motion, recommendation 5, the council maintains the removal of the $220,000 from the year 1 onwards in the 24 to 34 long-term plan as key choice 1 in our consultation document, that the Martin Pool remain only open on a seasonal basis.
Looking for a seconder to that for it's open for discussion. Councillor Lambert, you're prepared to second. Go back to you as the speaker, as the mover.
Thank you, Your Worship. Obviously, a large number of submissions on this particular key choice, and I think what was interesting was the number of submitters that had taken the time to write some notes rather than just saying yes that they would use it, and some of those notes were written by regular users of the pool, and I think they raised some very, very good points about the overall condition of the asset. And I think we've actually heard that reinforced by staff here today, Mr. Bernardi particularly speaking about perhaps a bigger longer term look at actually the asset condition. And I think to go to opening to a 12-month or a full seasonal operation is premature when we don't really understand the nature of what the pool is and some of the ongoing costs. And I think it would be very, very unwise for us to commit to that level of financing in our long-term plan and also commit to that level of rates increase when we really don't fully understand the condition of the pool. And I would welcome a more detailed report coming back to us at some stage in the future that this question could be revisited in a future long-term plan discussion. So I would be suggesting that recommendation 5 stands, and I'll be voting in favour of key choice 1.
As I said, there'll be 3 speakers for. I have speakers from Councillor Morn. I have Councillor Taker. Does your question relate to what has been written already? I'll take that question in a minute. I'm just trying to ascertain, please, who's going to speak to this. Councillor Morn, you're wishing to speak. The councillors that are wishing to speak, Councillor Hero. And I'll go Councillor Lambert because you second Councillor Dalgety. But when we get to 3 speakers for or 3 speakers against, that's where it stops. Take the question.
My question is, should we vote not to, should we go for option 1 to simplify it? Does that preclude within the 3-year period doing the maintenance and then trialling and opening, at least trialling and opening of the pool year round?
Yes, it does. So if you're in support of this motion, then effectively you're saying no to the pool being open
In this 3-year period.
within this triennium. Could you, in theory, take this back to an annual plan? It would be difficult because it's a very significant change of level of service. Take speakers to the motion. Councillor Morn, I think you had your first hand up.
Yes, I'll speak for the motion on a couple of reasons. First one is the economic one. It's quite apparent through a lot of the submissions that people are hurting out there, and we've already got a high enough rates increase as it is, let alone putting another 1.2% on. I'm very concerned about the drop in patronage of the pools over the last year, down 10,000 people. I know there's some reasons for that, but it doesn't give me any comfort that there's a lot of use there in the current seasons anyway. And yeah, I just think it's, and as I said, it sounds like it's deteriorated and we need to look at improvements of that. So I just think purely on the submitters, on economic terms, I just don't think it's feasible at this stage. So that's why I'm voting for it.
Thank you. It's 2 speakers for. In terms of the sequence of people, the right to speak, it'll be Councillor Lambert, Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Loudon, Councillor Wong. And we'll see where we get to with numbers. Councillor Lambert.
Well, obviously, since I seconded, I'll be speaking in favour of it. It's already been touched on by Councillor Morning, Councillor Wilson, my points entirely. I would like to see it open all year round, and it's something we've got to, would like to see it aim for. And at this stage, yeah, it's just not economically viable to do it, but I think there's the groundwork's being laid for future years. I'm looking forward to being open all year round, but when we are in a position to do it. But at this stage, I just feel that it is not justifiable.
Councillor Dalgety, are you speaking against?
I
had 3 speakers for.
For sure. Yes, I am speaking against the motion. I would like to take up Staff Member Arno's recommendation of a staggered approach. And while I accept the difficult economic climate we're in currently, the community have shown that they are keen to support this pool. So I would like more information to come back to us, and we can have a closer look at what actually has to happen to make this asset in our district usable.
Are you foreshadowing effectively that if this motion was to fail, that you would be looking for, to support, submitter number 121 in terms of the trial period? Is that what you are saying?
Yes.
Point. Councillor Loudon.
I'd like to speak against. I feel there's been quite an overwhelming indication from the community that the pool is an asset that needs to be better maintained. It will be utilised if it was better maintained. I think it's an asset that Rangitikei is grateful to have, and if it was better maintained and upgraded, it will be used better. Councils around the country are upgrading their pools, and they view it as an important community asset. I draw your attention to submitter 171, who suggests that $2 million for the Martin Street upgrade would be better spent on maintaining our asset in the pool. And there are submitters 172, 173, 177, 221, 229, 224, 244, 310, 317, all suggest the same thing, that the pool needs upgrading. And I will definitely put in an amendment to suggest that the council looks to invest in our present asset.
Okay, councillor, so we've had 3 speakers for, 2 against. Councillor Wong, you speaking against?
I'm speaking against. I can't support the motion as it stands, and I echo Councillor Dalgetty's points that we should embrace or give the Ms. Benedi's offer of a report looking into this, and unfortunately the motion precludes that in the next 3 years. So I would support Councillor Dalgetty and her foreshadow motion.
Now we've had 3 speakers for, 3 speakers against. Go back to right of reply.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think Councillor Loudon has raised some very good points. However, I think there's a little bit of misconfusion here. $357,000, I think is the number, whatever, is only to open the doors. It is not to upgrade the pool. And upgrading the asset and understanding the asset is absolutely key to being able to deliver it to be opened on an all year round basis. We simply do not have that information. The 357,000 simply opens it for the rest of the season. That cost is one that we do know. We do not understand the cost of what's involved in actually upgrading it. So how can we possibly make a decision to open a pool which we seem to feel needs some work done, and there's a general feeling from the community that it's not a terribly inviting asset to have, but there is a large feeling from the community that it's a valuable asset, and I agree with that. And I too would love to see it open all year round. But until we understand what's actually involved in doing that, we would be foolhardy to open it for a 6 months, extra 6 months, and run it on a trial basis, because we may well be dooming it to failure because we don't understand the condition of the asset and we do not understand what needs to be done. So I fail to see how we can make any other decision apart from the decision not to open it on a seasonal basis, and review that decision at some stage in the future based on accurate financial information and accurate condition of the asset. And that is one thing sitting around this table right here we do not know and we do not understand.
Thank you. There's now been a right of reply. I must put to the vote. Please raise your hands for those in favour of the motion, which means that it will not be open through the off season. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? 2, 3, 4, 5. And I just cancel this. Sorry. Can you raise your hands again just to make sure that we have the total number people and those of.
Well,
So those in favour of the motion, I just want to check the numbers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Just, you might want to just check here. Sorry, your worship.
He's already declared a conflict of interest.
Sorry, that's what I was asking.
Those against? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, understanding orders, that leaves me with the casting position. I'll reaffirm my vote that we do not open the poll. That is the state, also the status quo position. Councillor Hewell.
Yeah, I've got a question after going through that process. What I'd like to know is, given that this could have been information that should have been available to us in the public, I just assume that in future when we have these types of things that are going to be talking about assets for our community, that we should be on the top side of this, knowing what the impact is on a yes or no, because personally I've voted for that. But actually, I agree it should stay open, but I'm not comfortable in sitting in that space. So I'm just saying that when we put these sort of things out to our people, that we've got to know as much information as possible, because then we've gotten into a stalemate situation. And I'm sure that everyone that has voted against actually do want it. We all want it to be open, but there's things that come with it that we didn't know, and we should know, and our people should know, so that their wider view can be taken into consideration.
I take your point, councillor. However, I'll also make the note that there is the opportunity for councillors to ask specific questions around the information that you haven't been given. What I do note is that there has been questions around the condition of the pool raised at this stage that you may not have been aware of. Any comment, Chief Executive or staff?
I don't know about the planning for that, but obviously it's best to have as much information as you have and as you could have, and I guess it's the timing thing. But whether that's there has been a lot on in this last 6 months. Whether Arno's got anything to add.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. First of all, I completely agree with Councillor. It is the best place to be if you've got all the information in front of you and you can make an informed decision. I think this was an unfortunate timing issue where we wait for the pool to close, there's no people there, and we can have a look at all of it. And the pool only closed at the end of April, so it was kind of an overlap of timing that was the problem. And then we thought we'd rather make you aware of it so you can make as informed a decision as possible rather than not. So that's really just a timing issue.
This is not about a re-litigation of a decision, but you wish to make a point.
Just checking and possibly correcting what's on the screen from the recommendation. It says that the recommendation is lost. I don't believe that was the case. Just looking to see if I could get that casting vote was used, but it was carried, not lost.
Yes.
Thank you.
You can try.
Yeah.
I don't presume you're a swimmer.
I just wanted to clarify, just for the record, Council Hiro raised the question of staffing. The pool can't operate without the right ratio of staff there, so they can only operate when they have the correct number of staff there. So there's no suggestion that the pool's open when there's not the sufficient staff there, regardless who operates.
Councillor Duncan.
Can I just clarify? So the investigations and the work on the staff are going to do, Anna's going to do with around looking at what the condition of the asset. So that will come to assets and infrastructure at some stage so that we can look at that and. Thank you.
Yes, some legitimate questions have arisen out of this discussion. Councillor Moore.
Do we have to give some formal direction to staff about doing that? Is it like an emotion or anything, or is it just taken as an action?
It's underway. No, you don't.
Thank you.
Thank you. we move on. Turn it back to you.
So next we've got key choice 2, which is the curbside collection. So option 1, council adopted as the preferred option, which is to roll out a 3-bin curbside collection service in one go starting January 2027. This will have a rates increase, impact on rates of 1.7% in 26-27 and a 1.5% increase in 2027-28. Impact on debt would be an increase of 1.5 million, and impact on level of service would also be increased. I note that the impact on rates will only apply to ratepayers receiving curbside collection services. The other option we consulted on was option 2, stagger the provision of a recycling bin issued in January 2027 and an organic waste bin in January 2030. And this also means residents would need a separate contract for disposing of their general waste. The impact on rates for this one would be a 0.8% increase in 26-27, a 0.7% increase in 2027-28, and further increases in 2029-30 and then 2030-31. The impact on debt would be 1 million, an increase, and the impact on levels of service would be increased. We did have 369 submitters on this key choice. 54% preferred option 1, 31% option 2, and 15% chose something else. We also had a look at those who identified that they lived in a town that is proposed to receive curbside collection. And we had similar results there with 56% option 1, 31% option 2, 13% something else. There were a few key themes that came through the submissions. Those who preferred option 1 referred to the environmental benefits, convenience, noting their support also to begin curbside collection earlier than we planned. Option 2, key themes included concerns about the cost, comments that households would need to be educated on the use of recycling bins, and comments that some households already compost themselves. Those who identified that they preferred something else held a range of views. Some of these key themes included support for other things such as support for implementing curbside collection sooner, concerns about recycling processes, concerns about the cost, support for maintaining the status quo, and suggestions for other ways that households can be encouraged to manage waste.
Happy to take questions. I have one question that I previously circulated back to finance. There's a range of figures around the rate increases. There is a complication because they're compounding rates. But if you take a position at the end of 30-31 where the 0.6, what's the final rate increase with regard to those two schemes? In other words, what's their final position? And I did circulate this question.
I don't think I got that question.
Sorry?
I don't recall seeing that question, sorry.
I passed it on to, you weren't there, so I passed it on to one of your staff.
Oh, okay.
And asked him to pass it on to you. The reason I raised, and I'm sorry, I perhaps should have put that in writing directly to you. But if you take a very high rate increase year 1.7, and then you compound that by a rate increase the following year of 1.5, as opposed to minor increases over time, you know, what I'm interested in was the final position in that. I think there was a reply that came back to me.
Yes.
So sorry if the process became.
You were copied in, Dave.
Okay, I'll have to find the
I
email, sorry.
presumed that you were copied in.
Yeah.
I know, going back a couple of months when we were looking at all of this, we did find that by increasing the rates in year 3 and 4 for this, because of the compound impact, it did mean that subsequent years had a minor decrease. because the rate was being based on a higher starting point, for want of a better word. I've just got the email here.
Sorry, I'll give you a minute to think about that because I don't want to rush you. I'll take any other questions.
Quick question, thank you, Your Worship Chair. Where is the status, and you may know or may not know, what is the status of the government position? What is your understanding of where the government sits on curbside rate? Where have you?
In fairness, I'll pass this to staff first to see if they wish to respond.
All we can say is we haven't had any further knowledge of that being reviewed, revoked, or status quo remaining.
So the minutes, so the government has indicated that they wish to review, but there have been no further detail around what that review will entail.
Yep.
But they have indicated that they will be reviewing this process.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. That's all we have heard is that they intend to, but we've had nothing further.
So we don't know whether that review would entail a change in delivery type, or a change in dates, or a change in, government wanting to supplement or anything else. Literally open book.
The only comment I can make though is it won't come into the 2026, 27, so you have got a lead in time to alter whatever you're choosing should there be a different direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Morn.
Just a point of clarification is this is a general rate across all ratepayers for the curbside recycling, or just for the urban areas?
That receive the service.
Yeah.
Those that receive the service.
Because just some of the submitters, it was about rubbish collection, and we're rural.
It's a targeted rate.
Yeah,
Targeted rate.
I'm
Okay,
just,
no, just for clarification, thanks.
well, there's two aspects to this. So this is a rate increase to those that receive the service. However, the funding of the containers is a debt position which is across the district. And as a consequence, all ratepayers will be liable for that debt in the very simplest terms. Take question, Councillor Rokawa, Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Rokawa, then Councillor Rokawa, Dalgety, Loudon, Councillor.
A question, will the service be extended to Ratana, Koitiata and Tirakina?
The answer is no. There are named communities. I don't think that we've had a submission that I can think of that relates to a request from Ratana to be included.
146. Number 146.
Okay, so you haven't, thank you. So we would need to address that submission.
If I may add a comment, Your Worship, to that question, I think the reply that I've added there is at the moment the Ratana is included, and it would be a council decision to consider the cost of that inclusion. The reasoning why we single Ratana out from Koitiata and Scott's Ferry is the numbers. There are quite a number of residents in Ratana, and we thought the benefit is sufficient enough to consider the cost implication of that. Where the other two communities are really small, and we didn't see a benefit in that one.
Can I just ask the question around that? In terms of making that sort of decision, would there be an expectation that it would be, in terms of the long-term plan, a less than minor change, and that you could do it subsequently to this involved? Because in my view, you'd have to go back to Ratana and Scott's Ferry as a community and say, here is the impact, the support. Can you think about that one?
Yeah, I think if I understand the question,
What's the process then?
yeah, if I understand the question correctly, Your Worship, I think that's exactly the way I think it will work. If we have the go-ahead to continue with this work and look into it, oh, I'm afraid the dogs are going nuts, then we can do that work and we can ask council to make decisions as we move along. And I think there will be many other decisions. You know, what containers are we going to use? How often do we pick them up? There's going to be lots of questions and lots of decisions for council to make. And I think the number of communities included and the cost implications to all ratepayers that are going to receive the service would be one of those questions. So I think it's really approving the whole process to start.
So my advice to you as a councillor, Councillor Okawa, was if that is your view, then you may wish to consider a recommendation that, bearing in mind submission number 146 or whatever it was, that council, if the decision is to go for this, that council re-engages with that particular community. Councillor Dalgety.
My observation from the submissions was there seemed to be some confusion over recycling and curbside collection and a mix of what we were actually talking about here. And what I didn't understand was the general waste collection that's been offered with option 1. Why wouldn't that be offered with option 2 as well?
An answer from staff.
Yeah, that's I might have the answer incorrect, Councillor Delgado. I'll try. The difference, the only difference is in option 1, while somebody's there to pick up your recycling, let them pick everything up. Otherwise, what you might have is that we have a second provider, and in 2030 we will have a third provider. So you still need somebody to come and collect your general waste. You now have somebody else to collect your recycling, and in 2030 you have a third party to come collect your food scraps. And that's really the only difference is, do we do it all in one go and you only have one annual amount to pay, or do we spread it out and you might end up with 3?
Yeah, this is effectively a timing decision, isn't it?
Yeah, it's when you do it all at once.
Councillor Loudon.
Does council staff have capacity to roll this out in 1 year with their present staffing arrangements?
My understanding of that is a yes. So it's just, remember, what you're doing is not necessarily going collecting it all, but you have some decisions to make along that way. And it's a matter of when you make those decisions. So if you did it all in one, you just make them earlier. If you did it later, then they're going to be staggered. So I don't think there's any huge effect internally on putting that paper up as to which way that goes.
Any further questions? Can I just point out, as I understand it, so if you were going to go for everything in 2027, first of all, you have some lead-in time. And secondly, whether it is driven totally in-house or whether it is driven by a contractor that provides the service back to council, that would still need to be considered. So whether we have the capacity to do it ourselves or whether we contract the facility, the collection out to someone else is a subsequent decision. Does that answer your sort of question?
Yeah, I'm just concerned that council staff are actually very busy.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to add unnecessary stuff in.
Take your point. Please, staff, if I'm saying something that is incorrect or you have doubts about it, please jump in on top of me, please. And one, Councillor Dalgety.
So similarly to Ratana, under submission 220, I don't believe that Hunterville and Mangaweka necessarily want to be part of this. Could they opt out or not under that recommendation?
Provide clarity on that one. I think we said that the truck was going straight through there, so it made sense to include those communities. Am I right, Anna?
Yeah, if I can add also to that, we are looking for economies of scale. So for a contractor to pay attention and to be interested in this contract, the more customers we can have, the better for them. And with the trucks going right through those 2 towns, we thought that's an easy one.
And and certainly those communities that took up the opportunity of consultation, so it was well portrayed to them.
Gemma's got a
I can
question.
just let you know, for those who identified that they live in Mangaweka, we had 2 people suggest something else. For Hunterville, we had 9 choose option 1, 2 choose option 2, and 3 something else.
Thank you. Question, councillor Duncan?
Yes. So with the communities such as Mangaweka again, who are saying that their waste treatment at the moment is working perfectly well, and given the increase in cost that this will happen on communities, is it still, you're saying it's economies of scale for the contractor? What about the communities that then have to pay extra cost? Can we not consider that?
This is what we're doing effectively by way of the submission process. So we have asked for their views, and their views will be dictated by the effect on them and the effect on the environment and all other issues. Now, this is the process that was offered to them, as I understand it. Be a comment? I'm looking for someone, please, to put a motion on the table for discussion. Councillor Wilson.
Once again, interesting comment going around the table. I'm actually going to move for the second stage option, that we use a staggered approach. I'd like to put that forward, and I'll speak to my reasoning behind that.
I'm looking
Would you like me to read out what it is for online, or we?
Yes, that would be useful.
So the recommendation that I'm putting is that council approves the rates increase and impact on debt outlined in option 2 to be included in the 2024-34 long-term plan, and to implement key choice option 2, stagger the provision of recycling bins and organic waste, recycling bins 27 and organic waste through to January 30. That is the recommendation that I'm moving.
Looking for a seconder to you wishing to second that.
I am.
Okay. We now have a seconded. You wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, very briefly on this one. Again, there's lots of questions here. I just think that if we use the staggered approach, we buy ourselves a little bit more time to understand the market, understand central government's position, and understand what may work best for our communities, which may consider the options that were raised by other councillors around some of the smaller districts. I think we're buying ourselves a little bit of time here. I do actually like the idea of some curbside recycling, and I think that's important. I think it's important for our town. And I think it's generally across the board is what the submitters would like. I just think we need to take a little bit of a softly approach as to how we go with this. And I'd just like to see a staggered approach to give us a little bit more time to understand the issue, but more importantly, understand the cost impacts and understand what options we've got to deliver.
Calling for speakers, so one speaker in favour of option 2. Councillor Loudon, Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Loudon.
I'd like to speak against the motion because Councillor Wilson suggested that it will give us more time. This project will start in 2027, so I think there's adequate time to assess the situation and thinking about the contractor. If we do use a contractor that may utilise or provide this service, it gives them one good chunk to sort it out, and rather than stagger their approach to dealing with this issue.
One speaker for, one speaker against. Councillor Dalgety. Councillor Morn will be next. Councillor Dalgety.
I am speaking in favour of the motion for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we're unsure where central government will go with this. So waiting for their direction, because the proposal was acting on their original direction from the previous government. And secondly, I think that, yes, there is, room for curbside collection in our communities. However, there's a lot to learn, and especially around organic waste and the pickup of that. So, let's not rush in maybe, and let's learn what's good practice or works really well in other districts similar to ourselves. But I think the main point is that we all need to be conscious of our rubbish, and our system needs to recognise those that are.
Thank you. Councillor Moore, you're the next speaker.
Yes, I'm going to speak against it, purely because this choice wasn't really a choice of council. It was a choice that was implemented by central government. I think it's not on our, never come up, we've investigated curbside recycling in the past, I gather, and it was decided that it was too expensive. I just feel this isn't a key choice for the people or the council. It was a key choice of central government, and I feel that we've been forced into discussing it at all. So I think referring to submitter 375, we should actually look at increasing the hours of our transfer stations so people can get rid of their waste as and when they desire, rather than pander to central government. So that's my view. That's why I'm speaking against it.
Councillor Hero, are you the next person to ask to speak?
Can I ask this question?
Certainly.
So, just in relation to what councillor Morn has just said, isn't regardless of which choice it is, isn't it pretty much exactly the same thing? I know that the first choice talks about us being forced into a position because of potential government policy, but in effect, I'm just asking, in effect, what you're saying is that we don't do either of those.
Oh, that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you.
Looking for other speakers to the motion.
I just perhaps clarify just the position of the government changing its view. If it's 2027 that it's supposed to come on the 1st of January, we would have to do a significant change to our annual plan process unless they do something else to change that in that time, because 2027 is when you do your LTP. So there'd have to be in our annual plan, if the government changed direction, then we would need to notify that in one of our annual plans as a significant change in level of service, and run it through the annual plan. So we would have to do that if the government changes anyway. So that takes care of that before your next long-term plan.
So effectively, if the government changes them, and we must comply.
Yeah. So you'd have to do that.
So it's not even a consultation process. If the government says that this is what we're changing by way of law, we comply. So
to do that,
so whichever option becomes following the consideration of government, that's beyond us, and wouldn't be an annual plan matter because it would be
an annual plan matter though, because it will affect all of your dollars going forward.
No, absolutely. So I'm sorry to belabor this, but it wouldn't be our decision. It would be a governmental decision. We have to implement it by law in exactly the same way if they decided to put a surcharge on every individual council for some other reason. Is this a question or you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I have a question, just on what you've just said then. So you're saying if, and you're not going to labour it, but I might national it. If they change their minds, if they don't change their minds, if it's status quo, do we have a choice as to whether we stagger or to whether we have to do it all at once?
Okay.
We still do?
So the law currently says that you need to put in recycling, and these are the dates for the various stages of recycling.
Okay.
So the government could say, forget all that, we'll leave it to council discretion. No law, you do what you feel best. They could equally say, we want to reduce the time frame from 27 to 26, and it will be all recycling. But the moment they make the law, they call the shot.
Thank you.
Is that how you see it?
Yep, the only difference at the moment is that one of the options was to bring that second branch forward to 2027 instead of 2030. That's the only thing that's being debated here.
Correct.
Government direction, we have to follow the implications we have to put into our plans.
I have 2 speakers for, 2 speakers against. Are there any other people that wish to speak? Otherwise, I'll move straight to a right reply and a vote. Go back to right reply.
Thank you, Worship. I guess what I'm really trying to do by moving this second motion that we stagger the approach is actually to give council not only time, but to give council and us some options to better understand what it is we may or may not have to do. I fail to see why we should go into the investment of buying 3 bins when we suddenly discover we only need 1. What do we do with the rest of the bins? And I think it also gives us an option to really have a chat with contractors and or whether or not we consider to do it ourselves in-house. That could be an option. But we have an option to have a chat with contractors and say, here's what we're looking at. This is what we see the future being. This is what it's likely to happen. This is what has now happened or hasn't happened from a government position, so we can get a greater understanding of it. And then we can actually then, if you were to go to the market with a contract like this, I suspect it would be probably for a minimum of 5 years, if not even more. And that's going to take you through the sort of timeframes that we're talking about here to understand what we're actually wanting. And using a staggered approach, staggering the system actually gives us more scope to have, I think, more detailed conversations with either providers or whether or not we consider this doing as an in-house thing for ourselves.
Thank you. I now must put it to the vote. Those in favour of the motion that we effectively stagger, would you please raise your hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The vote's carried.
Record anyone against?
Certainly. By the way, councillors, we will, you're recording against.
No, I want to make a recommendation now that that's passed.
Certainly.
Can I make a recommendation based on that, that council re-engages with the communities based on, submission 335, 339, 340, 341, 344, 345, 345. Those are all wanting the data, they're all submissions asking for, that's no.
Yeah, hang on, their submissions wanting what?
They're wanting, the rubbish, the recycling, they picked the option to have recycling. They also asked if it could be, if they could have it at Ratana. These ones were Ratana.
So if they were all Ratana, then, and thank you, I should have picked up on the Ratana one. So that's on my part. But it wouldn't be a recommendation, you'd be moving a motion that we re-engage with Ratana to see if they would like to be
Sarah? Yes.
or you can either say that we re-engage or by the weight of those numbers that we include them.
Include. Yes.
Right, so can you just take what I'll invite you to do is just go back over exactly what you want in terms of wording.
Just include them.
Councillors, while you're doing that, I think at 11 o'clock we'll take a break, which will give us a lunchtime break a little bit later. But so 11 o'clock we will have been going for an hour and a half, not 2 hours. Take your time to get this right as to what you want.
Yes. So can council look at including the Ratana community in the
What I'd advise you is not to say look at.
Oh,
Your motion would be to say that we include Ratana, or we don't.
someone write it. Thank you. Yes. That council include Ratana.
Just to help you out here, you have two options. Option one is that council makes the decision that Ratana becomes this as part of this. And that then becomes the council decision. And you can use the numbers of submitters to say that that's the view of Ratana. Or you can say that Ratana wasn't originally in this and that you re-engage with Ratana to confirm whether they're in or out.
Actually, I
And
think.
that would be a subsequent decision by council. So whether you want to say they're in, or whether you want to say they have an option to consider.
I would like to say they are in.
That's your choice.
Yes. So could council include Ratana? Is that the right reading?
Council include Ratana
In the provision of.
waste recycling.
Option just passed.
Let's- If we get the motion, then I'll talk to staff around
Recycling bin.
In the provision of.
the process. Question,
Can I
councillor?
ask a question?
Yeah.
In reading this information that's been put out specifically around the curbside, there's already something in there that has been pointed out that Ratana consideration is going to be done for that community. Is that correct?
No.
So in the reading of the recommendations that came in, as I understood it in the reading from the feedback from the officers' comments, was that potentially Ratana was one of those places that could be looked at.
Could be looked at, but wasn't listed as being into the scheme.
So can I just continue on with that? So it could be looked at, but does there have to be a direct recommendation that says it has to be looked at?
That's giving the option, councillor Rakawa holds support here.
Yeah.
She can put a motion up to say that it has to be in. If that motion failed, somebody could consequently come up with a second motion to say that you re-engage with Ratana.
Yeah.
That's, as I said, any advice from staff here around the process I've illustrated?
It's 100% correct. Councillor Rakawa, I understand at the moment, is saying that it be included. But you could say that, and I think the mayor has given them the option of saying that we could engage with Ratana to have them consider it. So the two options are there. It's a matter of choice.
So she's saying it is included. If that vote passes, it is in. If that vote fails, there is the opportunity for another vote to say that we re-engage with them. Right. Can you, for those online, can you read your recommendation, or can somebody read it, please?
That council included Ratana in the provision of a recycling bin issued in January 2027 and an organic waste bin issued in January 2030.
Thank you. Could you have a seconder to the motion? You're prepared to second the motion? You wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do. I've looking over the submissions and seeing them that they're quite clearly submission 335, 339, 340, 344 have asked for the service. Could they have the service offered to them out at Ratana? So that's really my.
Okay, looking for speakers to the motion. That is one speaker in favour. Councillor Wilson.
Speaking against, your worship, I think Councillor Rakawa is correct in what she's saying, but I think we owe a due level of respect to our Ratana community, and I think we should be going and asking them directly. I think we have a communal board out there that we engage with. We also have the Ratana Community Committee that we engage with. I do not see that it'll be difficult for us to take this matter back to them and say, hey, here's what the decision came out of today's meeting. Thinking that you guys might want to be in, what are your thoughts? It could come back in at a later stage. So as it's worded, including them directly without consultation, I think is probably a little bit full.
Are you foreshadowing a principle?
I believe my fellow councillor may be looking to do that.
Councillor Hera.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to be pulled up here because it's a conflict of interest, but I actually sit on the the Ratana Community Board. And so as much as that these 5 people that have put in, pulled that portable in my mind and what I've experienced.
Can I just rule on that first so you can proceed? I don't see this as a conflict of interest. You are all sitting on various sections of the community, making decisions for the community. In fact, everyone here is a ratepayer, or likely to be a ratepayer. So there's no conflict of interest. You're free to progress.
Thank you. So I would say that I would be more inclined to go back to them because there's been some very strong kōrero that I've said amongst where people are not interested in being pulled into being part of, we take the community board for instance, and taking on board debt where they don't want to do that. So I think it needs to go back to the community directly.
So we've had 1 speaker for, 2 against. Any other speakers to this?
Can I speak, Your Worship?
Did you speak on with regard to the recycling?
Yeah.
Did you submit? Sorry, I would prefer that you don't. I just don't want to open you up to any form of challenge.
That's fine.
Any other speakers? I'll go Councillor Loudon, and depending on what you say, I'll speak.
I'll speak against the motion. I think it's a matter of communication. I think we need respect to Ratana as a whole, and I think it's the right thing to communicate with them and have a discussion with them.
So you had 3 speakers against. Any other speaker for? No. Councillor Rakawa, back to write a reply.
No, I take on board what my fellow councillors have said, and I'll just leave it at what I've said.
You have the right to vote against it or whatever, if you wish. Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against?
Hilda.
Motion is lost. Does somebody wish to put an alternate? Councillor Hera.
And I'm just thinking staff before I start talking for your wordsmithing, but to the thought around it would be that that we go back to the council to the Ratana community itself to get their take on this whole issue. You maybe have some better wording than I've got. Thank you.
The motion could be that council council engages with the Ratana community in the provision of recycling. To understand if these services are wanted by the community.
Thank you.
That you wishing to move that?
I like the wording of that, Your Worship, sorry, but I just think it should reference recommendation 6 that has been made today. I'd like to see it reference the actual decision that was made.
I agree.
Thank you.
I missed that out.
I'm happy to second.
So you're wishing to move that, looking for a seconder to that. We'll let the wordsmithing catch up in just a second.
Happy to move it.
No, the motion came from Councillor Hera. I'm looking for a seconder to Councillor Duncan's seconder. Have we got? This, we'll wait until this catches up. Just staff, in terms of this, I see this as a less than minor effect on district-wide rating positions, etc. I don't see a difficulty going back to this in terms of the wider context of the rates.
Remember, with an annual plan process, you can choose not to go out to the public or not doing anything different, but you can on any major things have a major change. But totally concur with you. You can engage with them, and I still think you've got time with this one. It's 2027 before anything comes in.
Yes. So that's my view. Yeah. I just want to make sure the staff are comfortable that I'm not getting myself in a hole that I can't claw out of. Right. Do we have them?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy with that. Do you wish to speak to your motion? Any speakers to the motion, Councillor Loudon?
I'm speaking for, and I'd like to thank Councillor Rakawa for bringing this to the council's table. I think it's an important thing to communicate and engage with Ratna.
Thank you. We've had a speaker moving, a speaker in support, that's two. Councillor Dalgety.
I'll speak in favour of the motion based on the submissions we've received.
Thank you. Please, it would be useful, staff, if you take note of this, the reference to submissions by the. Any speakers against this? No. Do you need right of reply? No. Everybody's in favour. Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll call a halt for a quarter of an hour before we start another major session with the requirement to stop for 2 hours. Thank you. Can go back live, please. Welcome. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for those online staying with us. I move back to Jana to talk to us about a key recommendation, a key decision choice, sorry. Number 3. Jana.
So key choice 3 is the Martin Main Street revitalisation. So your option 1, which was adopted as the preferred option, is the streetscape revitalisation for Martin. The impact on rates for this one is 0.36% from year 3. Impact on debt is 2.1 million, and impact on level of service would be increased. Option 2 is our status quo, which is do not invest in streetscape revitalisation for Martin. So that will have no impact on rates or debt, and then unchanged impact on level of service. We had 381 submitters who submitted on this key choice. 52% of overall submitters preferred option 1, 40% preferred option 2, and 8% preferred something else. We also had a look at the submitters who identified that from Martin, with 56% for option 1, 37% option 2, and 7% something else. Key themes that we identified for those who preferred option 1 were related to potential benefits for growth, including attracting visitors, attracting residents, and attracting new businesses. Key themes for option 2, the status quo, were focused on affordability and funding, maintenance, considering an upgrade is not actually needed, and then sort of suggestions for maintenance, including buildings, the village green, existing plants, and other priorities. Those who identified that they prefer something else included views around the implementation of it, financial concerns, and then identifying they have other priorities. We also had a few that had comments on the preferred design.
Take questions. And while you're thinking, councillors, question of clarification from me. When we went out, it was on the understanding that individual properties would not be using this fund. Is that as I understand it?
That's correct.
So if the submitters are asking for that to be included, that would be a separate stage to this if somebody wanted to pursue that. Thank you. Questions, councillor Loudon?
Just a question. There were quite a few comments on the Facebook page that brought to our attention, and there were 49 people who made comment regarding this. Majority were for this project. Were they considered as part of the graphs and what people?
I can say Facebook comments weren't included in the deliberations report.
Any further questions? Councillor Duncan, you raised a question on email to me. Do you wish to illustrate that question?
Yes, that was just regarding, in fact, it doesn't affect the recommendations because it's still 2.1 million. But in the officer's comments, just let me find it, in the sorry, I'm just trying to find paragraph 6, approximate impact on rates on, it says on, there will be an impact on debt of $2.1 million. But however, the 0.1, the 100K, I believe comes from the Better Off funding, which therefore should not go on to debt. So it would just be the clear $1 million that goes on to debt. Is that correct?
Can I just provide some clarification on that? Having had a chance to see your question this morning, Councillor Duncan, for clarity, there appears to be
a little confusion around the two separate projects. The project that is the town centre revitalisation, which is as a result of Better Off funding, where we received $200,000. 80,000 of that was for Martin and 60,000 of that for Bulls and for Taihape. And those are for placemaking and wayfinding activities. That is a standalone project that sits in its own right, separate from the town centre streetscape upgrade, which is the key choice in the long-term plan. So isolate the $200,000 of Better Off funding away from this, and you're left with a $2.1 million project, 100,000 which is set aside for the design and creation and planning for this project, and 2 million for the implementation.
I think, in fairness to the people in the wider community, council's created a confusion here. And that was my point back to you, that in relating it into the key choice document, it would be rightfully assumed that that was the source of funding. And that's the clarification point that I was after. Councillor Loudon.
What's council staff view on the utilisation of the word revitalise? Because there seems to become some confusion from submitters as to what that means. There were quite a few submitters, for example, who ticked the box on option 1, but then made comment about cleaning buildings, painting buildings, and that came through on some of the oral submissions too. What is council staff's feeling on the comments that have come through the submissions on that word revitalise and what people think it means?
Yeah, I couldn't speak to individuals' intent about what they think they mean when they use the word revitalisation. It would be unfair to make that assumption. What I can say is that we received comments about design ideas from people who submitted. We also received ideas around their view for the buildings in town as well. And in our responses, we were very clear to say that privately owned buildings in town were not the responsibility of council, and we are working with those commercial property owners on a separate piece of work to help inspire them along their journey to improve the look and feel of those buildings, which is a separate piece of work to the town centre streetscape upgrade, as it's been referred to.
And my questions are around clarification in terms of councillors' minds around how this proceeds. So there is a plan done. That's what council votes for. And to make sure that a plan can actually happen, you put aside a set figure. So if the plan, what's the approval process for the plan? So the plan is derived. Who does it go back to in terms of sign off that this is actually a great plan and we want it to happen? Can you talk me through that process, please?
It would be my anticipation that once we've completed a plan, that would actually come back before council for input. And as part of the plan, council will have the opportunity, whether that is via full council at a workshop or a committee, to actually input into that plan as well. So the plan isn't a set and forget of council. There will be involvement from the community, from stakeholders, which includes councillors around the table.
So that community involvement discussion, bearing in mind that a substantial cost of this is the 2.1 loan fund debt position. How does somebody in Taihape or wherever have an input into this? Or do you see this being a Martin function, that is a workshop with people in Martin around their plan and then adopted, and the implications are, I just want to make sure that we have absolutely an understanding of who is involved in these decisions.
we've, as a part of this consultation, we've received input from community members from outside of Martin as well. In regards to the design of what the streetscape could look like in that implementation. The stakeholders would be the community members, the businesses, property owners in Martin.
I think, sorry, just to go on with that one, I think because it's district-wide funded, there would be no intention not to ask others across the district what their view was in terms of this plan.
So would it be possible, I'm sorry to labour this, but I want this very clear. Would it be possible to spend year one developing the plan, engaging with people, and then subsequently taking it to an annual plan to tick a box to go ahead, where everybody can view, or is that too far out in terms of timing, or is that an option?
At the end of the day, it's your call.
It would become
Yeah.
an option,
Yeah.
I guess.
Mm.
It'll be coming back. This is about Martin Main Street.
Yes.
So there's no suggestion that it's going to be spent anywhere else.
No.
But other people can have an input into it.
Yes.
Is that what you're
Well,
asking?
I'm just, looking at the approval process for the plan
I
as
think
such.
one of the things that we tried to make clear was that we need a plan to say what is going to happen, but there's no point having a plan if there's no budget to support anything actually being done, and that's the intention of putting the whole budget in there.
I take that point. Absolutely. Councillor Hero.
Just a comment around, there's been a number of things that have happened in, up in the northern and the Taihape township. And I feel like it's going to be, at the end of the day, each township, each of us come from different areas. And with the understanding that, of course, there is a district-wide rate that's put on all of us. So I would imagine that despite, well, at the moment, this is the project that's we're looking at in Martin, and have no problem with that, because we all know that every project can't happen in every town at this moment in time. So I agree that so I don't know if I'm just trying to figure out, you're looking at the 100,000 start off plan, but you've got to have the amount. Because a waste of time us going and say yes, 100,000, and then there's no money. Me, Andy, the thing around that you're asking is who makes the final decision. There is a lot of submitters that have talked about the different things that are, that they'd like to see within the Martin, that revitalisation, whatever word we want to use. I would expect that they would be part of or some of those people would be part of contributing into it, into a growth.
Exactly. The final sign off would come to council.
Questions?
Questions? This is one. Submitter 177 suggested that money could be channeled into earthquake strengthening fund that council could help building owners begin that process. And it's been on the council workshop table before, and I think quite well received. Can that be built into this proposal at this point?
No. In my view, you have a loan submitter asking for earthquake strengthening, where council money gets portrayed in that situation. If you want to do that as a separate position, then that's fine. But council has been very firm around saying that we're not in the business of supporting individual property owners to that extent. I think it's possible to raise it and you'd put it to a vote, but that's up to you. Councillor Moore.
There was quite a few submissions on our building that we own on the corner of Broadway and High Street. The bulk of them They're saying get rid of it. From what I can gather, there's a couple that are saying it's iconic and all. Where are we? Are those buildings part of this plan or that's completely separate?
So those particular buildings are subject to a separate piece of work which has previously gone through council, which was deeming them a surplus asset to council, to engage with a real estate agent, and put them on the market for sale. Council has made some decisions around what the considerations are for that sale, and we're providing a monthly report through the chief executive's report on the progress of where we're at with that particular, I guess, stream of work, that particular action.
Whatever the,
Sorry.
I was just going to just clarify, whatever the state or stages that's at would be reflected in the plan. So if there was a decision that they were going ahead and being developed in some way, that would, whatever was happening there would be reflected in that plan.
Okay, can I just come back to you, Councillor Loudon? In terms of your train of thought, sorry, I'm possibly thinking a little bit slowly here. So there's recommendations on the table around the use of $2 million, effectively, or 2.1. If that recommendation was to fail, could you put a motion on the table to say that that money could be alternately used for something else? The answer is yes, you could. But in the first instance, we have to deal with the key choice. If that key choice was no longer applicable, you could suggest the use of that money for something else. Does that make sense? Yes. Yeah, yeah. Okay, Councillor Dalgety, that's what you're thinking. Not just me.
Just further to the conversation that we've had, I'm just, some of the submitters referred to this plan when we don't know what's happening with the vital buildings on the corner. So do you feel there's some risk around going ahead with the plan and not knowing what is going to happen on that corner?
To kind of answer that question, I looked at the buildings and the potential upgrade and what that plan could look like as two separate items, because the streetscape upgrade plan would not include, in its current state, include the buildings. So whatever what kind of redevelopment happened at that particular site in the future wouldn't have an impact on a streetscape upgrade. The same way that it doesn't have an impact on any of the other buildings from a tangible touching of that building, doing work to it, or anything like that.
I'll just ask further.
Yeah, push your luck.
So you know, if we don't know if they would be wanting to have use of the pavement area for cafe or something similar to that. Yeah, that's what's going through my mind.
And so provisions for that, councillor, already kind of exist in the district plan and allow for businesses to be able to apply to use part of the paved way in front of their businesses. And so whatever a streetscape upgrade could look like will allow businesses to potentially take advantage of that upgrade. The same way that if a business doesn't have access to it, they in effect can't take advantage of that house.
Councillor Duncan, questions?
Yes, thank you for staff. Given the amount of submissions that specified that paint and cleaning would have a huge impact on the main street, will there be some analysis in the plan done as to the value of that versus actual physical works?
That's an interesting question. The reason I say it's an interesting question is we've just developed a work stream where we're working with property owners to formulate a plan for them to be able to enable that moss mold killing, water blasting and painting. That isn't council taking financial responsibility, but helping inspire them and create a pathway to take advantage and do it. But if that's something that you'd like developed in the plan, then should this key choice go ahead, then we can absolutely build that into the scope when we go out and actually start to do this work.
I just raised the point here, that I raised the issue that the water blasting, and it hadn't been done for about 3 years, but it was part of normal council business. And so in all of our towns, that's a process that we routinely need to go through.
Thank you.
And it now has been timetabled. Councillor Loudon.
Just before I ask my next question, can I ask the chair if I have a conflict of interest being the building owner on the main street, but not between the roundabouts?
No, I don't see a conflict of interest.
But in the news over several years, there's been quite a bit of concern from business owners who have had their businesses disrupted by infrastructure changes within the Auckland landscape, and to the point where some of those businesses have become quite economically challenged and basically not viable. Has there been any consideration by council staff regarding the impact on business owners whilst any upgrades of the street and street traffic goes on?
So in our existing policies under rates remission, etc., first of all, anybody can come with a position of hardship. The thresholds of that are determined as to who hears that. So, for instance, if there was major work being done, and this is an issue that is being faced in Wellington at the moment to a very high degree, there is a process that they can go back through the chief executive and ultimately at a high level to council if they were faced an imposition that challenged their business because of work. That's the decision-making process, as I understand it.
Just, it's only a comment. You would hope that everybody was engaged in a plan going forward that'll work. And you've got to remember those Auckland was, there was one business that was affected for 3 years, you know, so that's never going to happen. But you'd hope that everybody's buying into this plan and people would be aware and whatever work was undertaken would work around as best they could.
I mean, I'm concerned, for instance, and it's just been reported that, for instance, Wellington have just put in new street cycleways and done up streets fully, and the disruption to business that you refer to has been huge. With the absolute knowledge that there are water leaks under what they have just built. And so they're going to go through the process again. But I share your sentiment. Sorry, I share the sentiments of councillor that's raised it. Any further questions? Otherwise, I'll be asking somebody to put. I know Councillor Wilson's looking all around the room, like somebody jumps in. Councillor Loudon, are you wishing to put some, or is this a question?
Can't read that. Where is it? You'll find it in here.
Either or.
I'd like to put a motion on the floor, or the council removes the budget of 2.1 million in the 2024-34 long-term plan associated with Key Choice 3 and does not implement the streetscape revitalisation project for Martin.
I'm looking for a seconder to that motion. So this is the motion that you do not proceed with this in effect. Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Rokawa, you're seconding?
Yes.
Go back to speaking to the motion. Councillor Loudon.
I definitely feel as though looking through the submissions that there's been quite some confusion amongst submitters about the word revitalisation and what that means. I don't think some of the submitters understood what council had intended to do was to look at revising the way the street operated, and there was a lot of submitters who ticked the box for option 1, but then commented quite a lot on what they would do, and most of it was tidy up, maintain, clean, and that and the like. I am quite concerned about the structure of the buildings along the street, and I think it's a real issue for Martin Township, and I feel as though council should be putting their interest in how to assist building owners to strengthen and upgrade their buildings rather than the streetscape right now. I think it's a difficult streetscape to upgrade. It's been done once before, and I think quite effectively for the narrowness of the street. I just don't feel as though council should be spending money in this space right now.
Thank you. Question or speaking?
Speaking.
Speaking, go ahead, please.
I don't support that motion. I think this $100,000 is actually very good money spent, invested. It doesn't commit us to spend the $2.1 million at any time. It's coming back to council. I take on board everything Councillor Loudon has said, including the confusion. This is a very good space for the staff to actually consult with the public as to what they want and to clarify it. And when it comes up to council, we can vote on it. There's no money planned to be spent until year 3. And also on the point that Councillor Loudon brought up about wishing to support the owners who own buildings and earthquake strengthening, the fact that we actually are spending money on the main street and setting example to upgrade the main street is, by example, giving them incentive to spend money on their building, because we have faith that Martin has a future. And I think that is a very strong message we have gotten from people right across the district, including from the Northern Ward, who would support that. So, thank you.
Councillor Wilson, you next have your hand up, and then I'll go Councillor Okawa.
You're certainly speaking against the motion as it reads. It's up there at the moment, and I think the concerns that Councillor Loudon's has raised are valid, but of course they can be answered if you develop a good plan that engages your building owners and engages your community to better understand. And this word revitalisation, well, that would be something that would be fleshed out when you're going through that process of talking with the people. And all the concerns that Councillor Loudon have raised can be addressed and can be answered with a good process and a good plan to go through. So I think from that basis, I'm speaking against the motion as it stands.
Can I just go back and point of, before I go to you, Councillor Okawa, a point of clarification over one thing you said. You referenced that no money will be spent till year 3.
No, not the $2 million wouldn't be committed. The $100,000 will be spent.
Staff, do you agree with that position that no money would be spent?
So as it's written in the long-term plan at the moment, we've got $100,000 in year 25-26, and Councillor Timms can just confirm that for me. With the implementation being the following year debt funded, so the spend would hit the following years.
So just wondering.
Okay. The page 56, impact on rates of 0.3% of rates from year 3. So
because if work was done in year 2,
yes,
the depreciation effects alone would kick in.
Sorry, what I mean is that there's no effect on rates until year 3.
I accept that position, but I just want to clarify.
Yes, my apologies.
Councillor Okawa, no need to apologise. Councillor Okawa, Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Okawa.
Seeing that I second it, I actually am in favour. What I believe, why I support this is, I know that we've just talked about the focus or the plan. What does it really include? And I would think that, could we come up with an alternative plan instead of spending the 2.1 million? There were a few submissions that spoke to that. One of them in particular was submission 307, volume 4. And also, could we not look at the Martin Community Committee, or Martin Development Trust, I think, to look at this and coordinate this instead of council? It's just my thoughts.
Okay, councillor Dalgety.
I'm going to be speaking against the motion. Why I am fully aware of the significant cost of living crisis we're all trying to deal with at the moment. I do think a appealing revitalised Main Street is good for our district, and if we have the heart of the district feeling buoyant, it's good for everyone. So that's why I'm wanting to go ahead with this plan, and as we've already discussed, depending on what comes out from that, further budget will be decided later.
We've had 3 speakers for, 3 speakers against. Go back to right of reply.
Thank you. I commented before that Martin has an opportunity to revitalise itself. I'm not in favour that this is the way it should be done. I haven't seen any evidence that upgrading a street will change the economic aspect for the building owners and their tenants and the businesses on the main street. There's no evidential link that I can see or find. Many submitters have really wished to have the place cleaned up, and Your Worship has already mentioned that it hasn't been done for 3 years. And I think there could be a lot of work done in general maintenance around. I couldn't find the submitter's comment, but one submitter made a comment there, and I think it's one of our more younger submitters on this topic, said that they'd rather Martin be fun than pretty. And I think it's important to understand that we do have a community here, and I would like to see council committing to community assets rather than a streetscape.
Thank you. I now must put it to the vote. So those in favour,
Raise your hand.
raise your hands, please. 2. Those against?
2 hands, sorry. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. The motion is lost.
Bishop, I'd like to move straight to the next motion, if I may, if you feel there's been enough discussion on the subject.
You can try.
I would like to move that council approves the budget of $2.1 million for the 24-31 long-term plan to implement Key Choice 3, Option 1, streetscape revitalisation of Martin as worded in the order papers.
Looking for a seconder to that. Seconded. I'll let you speak to it, then I might make an amendment. But
yeah, I think there is a bit of confusion around this one. It could be around the word revitalisation, but it says we don't know what revitalisation looks like until we sit down with the community and we come up with a plan jointly as a group. And I think the word revitalisation can be fleshed out. This is more than just making it a economically viable place for businesses. That is not the intent of this. It is about making Martin a fun, inviting place to come, enjoy spaces, stay and linger and meet up and engage with. It's about well-being, it's about placemaking, it's about all of these things, none of which we can do until we get out on what I believe is going to be a really, really exciting journey with our community to try and see what we can do with Martin. We've got to remember that we made decisions around these buildings some 8 or 10 years ago. That is now gone. We have also committed to Tie Happy over and above Martin first. We've committed to that. It is our time to really take this opportunity deal with the fact that we have a tired, shabby-looking streetscape. And this could be a real journey. It's a great opportunity, but you cannot come up with a plan unless you've got the financial money sitting in your budgets to implement it. If you say, let's just spend $100,000 and develop this plan in conjunction with the community, let's get all these ideas to come together, let's workshop it, let's thrash out what the space could be. Unless you've got the money sitting in your budgets to back it, you've doomed the plan to failure right from the word go. And you will disappoint huge sections of the community by doing that. You simply can't do one without the other. And I think the recommendation is sound. I think the principles behind it are solid. And I think it's about time we got on and dealt with the issue rather than just batting it around to the next long-term plan where the next conversation comes up and we've done nothing. It's about time we jolly well got on and did it. So strongly in favour of the recommendation.
Thanks, speakers to it. I'll speak to this one. I fully support where Councillor Wilson, Deputy Mayor, is going. However, what I would like to move is an amendment, and the amendment would be that approval and adoption of the plan becomes part of the annual plan process, which ties in with the funding stream of 2 to 3 years. I think that so that's my amendment, and the reason for this is because I think that there are all sorts of opportunities that could be taken with this, and I think we are unknown at the moment. So I'd just like to see an approval process around how it is spent. So that's the amendment, if somebody can give me some type words around it.
Can I just ask, does it need to come to an annual plan or does it need to come to council for decision?
No, I think that the timing of our budgets makes it easy to be able to tell the communities, wider communities, of what we're doing. Potentially, I could see this as a process that folds out elsewhere.
Question?
Take a question.
I was interested in your thoughts on that comment, Katrina, please.
I think tying the adoption of the plan to an annual plan could be restrictive in terms of our timing of developing the plan. So we'd look to start developing it obviously the end of this year. To get it into that next annual plan, would have to have that ready to go effectively by the end of this year, or have to wait a cycle. So my concern would be how that would work with timing, whether or not we're setting ourselves up for a delay that we don't need. Confirming the plan itself definitely would come back to council for a decision. Any changes to the funding obviously would have to be incorporated into an annual plan, but my concern is tying the decision of the plan to an annual plan could make it slightly awkward for the timing of that work.
Just reply to it. You essentially have a year. You're going to have have done the work with deriving the plan. There'll be a whole process of engagement. But I haven't got a second to the amendment, so I'm going to stop there. The council approves the budget, with adoption plan, including funding becoming part of 25-26 annual plan process. Moving that as an amendment, looking for a second, otherwise it dies. Prepared to second. Thank you. I think there are all sorts of really, really exciting positions with this. And it could even include the business community saying, you know, we want to do other exciting things like painting our own buildings, etc., etc. But literally, we just don't know enough about the plan for me to feel comfortable in just saying that the money is just there just to be spent. So I just see this as a safety net in itself. Any speakers to the amendment? Councillor Duncan, Councillor Moore, Councillor Duncan.
I don't have a problem with the amendment. I'm speaking for this, but I have grave concerns that we're setting ourselves up for another plan that we won't do anything with. And I think that the community need to know that there's a huge commitment from all of us to make something happen. I have had a lot of people say to me, but you know, this is number 3 plan and nothing's happened. So I know it's banging on a bit, but really we really have to do something. And everybody deserves this, and so that we can move on to Taihape.
Councillor Moore.
I'm speaking against the amendment. I just think it's delaying another process in a process. I think that the original motion has plenty of scope for consultation, discussion with businesses, public. Yeah, I just think it's another process that we don't need to go through. That's why I'm against it. Let's get on with it.
Any other speakers? Councillor.
Speaking against the amendment, we haven't had too many speaking against it already, but just speaking against the amendment, I do tend to take on what Councillor Moore said. We've gone through a process. We've just done that. You know, if we do this again, what we're going to be doing is we're going to go out to consultation again in 2026, and we run the risk of the failure to actually deliver that Councillor Duncan's talking to. I do think that there is a further amendment that would be suitable, but delaying this project to the 25-26 annual plan process, I don't think is a very good idea.
Any other speakers? And just by way of right reply in effect, this does not necessarily mean an annual plan that you go out and invite a whole lot of process around it. This is a process in my mind where you can say this is what we are doing, and you invite things. In much the same that we put out all sorts of work schedules and signal. Put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Sorry, thank you. Those against? The amendment passes. Go back to speakers, the original motion.
We've just got the application, if we've spoken.
The amendment has failed, it just drops out.
Yeah, so if we've spoken to that first recommendation.
So the mover has spoken to it only. So you've had one speaker in favour of the motion.
Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
I'll speak in favour of the motion. I think we've done our consultation process. I'm confident that the businesses, the community and the council will work together on developing an awesome plan for the streetscape revitalisation. And yeah, I think we just, the $100,000 is a good start. That will create the plan, and then at least we've got some funding behind us to start implementation. So I think go for it.
Other speakers? Councillor Lambert.
I'll speak in favour too. I think it's high time we cracked on with this, and the benefits for the whole of the Rangitikei will be massive. I think it might sound just a small Martin-based thing, but I think the sooner Martin itself looks bright and inviting, the sooner the rest of the district will benefit. So strongly in favour.
That's 3 speakers for. Any other speakers against? Put it to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. That deals with those 3 key choices. The meal will be here now. Councillors, we will stop for lunch. Can I have a feedback, please, from councillors as to what time have people got other arrangements that they have to do during lunch? Or can we cut the hour back to 3/4 an hour, for example?
Half an hour.
3/4 an hour, half an hour, yes.
Yeah.
How many, can I show of hands who wants to come back in half an hour? Half an hour it is. Thank you very much.